The sun hung low over the jagged cliffs of the Pacific Coast Highway, painting the ocean in strokes of fiery orange and deep indigo. Dust swirled in lazy eddies along the roadside pullout, where a lone figure knelt beside his weathered Harley, its chrome fenders catching the last glints of daylight. Ethan Harlan, a man whose face bore the etched lines of too many sun-baked miles and unspoken regrets, wiped grease from his hands with a rag that had seen better days. At 42, he was a ghost of the open road, a veteran of forgotten wars, bound by a promise he'd made under the stars of a desert night long ago. That vow, whispered to a dying brother in arms, had kept him riding solo, chasing horizons that never quite led to peace. But peace shattered in an instant, further down the winding road where the asphalt twisted like a serpent toward the sheer drop-off. A battered pickup truck idled erratically. Inside, a boy no older than 12 clutched the dashboard, his wide eyes reflecting the panic of his father behind the wheel. The man, sweat beading on his brow, pumped the brakes futilely as the vehicle lurched forward. Smoke hissed from the undercarriage, and the acrid scent of burning rubber mingled with the salty sea air. The truck teetered on the edge, gravel crunching under tires that refused to grip. The boy, young Caleb, with freckles dusting his cheeks and a backpack still slung over one shoulder from a day at the local garage where he helped his dad, froze in terror. This wasn't just a breakdown. It was a countdown to the abyss. The kind of accident that swallowed lives whole without mercy or warning. Caleb's father, a hard-working mechanic named Marcus, had waved off the warning signs all afternoon. The truck was their lifeline, hauling tools and dreams from one coastal town to the next. But now, as the engine roared in protest, Marcus's hands trembled on the wheel. "Hold on, son," he muttered, voice cracking like dry earth. The boy didn't scream. He just stared at the void below, where waves crashed against rocks like thunderous applause for impending tragedy. Indignation burned in Caleb's chest, not at his dad, but at the cruel indifference of the world that let good men falter like this. If no one noticed, if no help came, they'd both be gone, leaving behind a garage full of half-fixed engines and a life unfinished. That's when Ethan straightened up from his bike, his leather jacket creaking softly in the breeze. He'd pulled over to check his own rig after a long haul from the inland valleys, the vibration of the road still humming in his bones. His eyes, sharp from years of scanning for threats in shadowed alleys and war-torn streets, caught the glint of fluid pooling beneath the truck, brake fluid, dark and viscous, snaking toward the cliff's edge like a traitor's whisper. He didn't hesitate. Striding forward with the purposeful gait of a man who'd faced down worse than fate's whims, Ethan waved his arms, his voice cutting through the wind like a blade. "Hey, shut it down, now! Your brakes are gone!" Marcus slammed the gear into park, but the truck shuddered, inching closer to the drop. Caleb bolted from the passenger door, his sneakers skidding on loose pebbles as he ran toward the stranger. In his haste, the boy glanced back at his dad's ride and spotted it too, the telltale drip, the shimmer of danger. "Mister, the fluid! It's leaking bad!" Caleb yelled, his voice high and urgent, pointing frantically. Ethan's gaze flicked to the boy, then to the Harley. In that split second, a spark ignited in his chest, reminiscent of the oath he'd sworn. To stand for the overlooked, to pull the innocent from the jaws of chaos. He wasn't just any rider. He was the last guardian of the Iron Oath, a biker creed born from battlefield bonds, promising aid to those the world abandoned. Ethan sprinted to the truck, grabbing a coil of rope from his saddlebag on the fly. The air thickened with tension, the distant cry of gulls mocking the peril below. "Kid, get back!" he barked to Caleb, who instead darted closer, small hands grabbing a rock to wedge under the wheel. Together, they braced the vehicle, Ethan's muscles straining as he looped the rope around the bumper and anchored it to a sturdy guardrail post. Marcus killed the engine, the silence deafening except for their ragged breaths. The truck halted inches from the edge, the cliff's maw yawning hungrily just beyond. As the adrenaline ebbed, Ethan clapped a hand on Caleb's shoulder, feeling the boy's tremble subside. "You spotted that leak first, didn't you? Saved your own skin there, partner." Caleb looked up, eyes wide with a mix of awe and relief, nodding shyly. Marcus stumbled out, pulling his son into a fierce hug, tears carving tracks through the grime on his face. "We owe you everything," he said, voice thick. Ethan waved it off, but inside the old promise stirred. A vow to his fallen comrade, Jake, who'd made him swear to protect the vulnerable, to ride not for glory, but for the quiet honor of doing right. This boy, this near miss, felt like fate's reminder. Some debts never faded. Words spread fast along the coastal grapevine. By nightfall, as Ethan nursed a coffee in a roadside diner, his phone buzzed with messages from old riding buddies scattered across the states. The Iron Oath Network, a web of leather-clad souls bound by shared scars and unbreakable loyalty, hummed to life. Caleb's quick eyes and Ethan's steady hands had averted disaster, but whispers of sabotage lingered, rumors of cut lines, perhaps from rivals eyeing Marcus's garage for its prime spot. Ethan stared into the black coffee, steam rising like ghosts. He'd walked away from the club life once, after Jake's death in a hail of desert gunfire, burying the pain under miles of asphalt. But now, with a boy's life in the balance and shadows creeping in, the call to ride together pulled at him like gravity. Dawn broke with a chorus of engines. Ethan fired up his Harley, the throaty rumble echoing off the cliffs. He didn't know it yet, but this warning, this cliffside salvation, would summon the full might of the oath. Riders from dusty towns and rainy ports would converge, not for vengeance, but for justice wrapped in moral steel. Caleb watched from the garage window as Ethan rolled out, a small wave goodbye, carrying the weight of newfound trust. The road ahead twisted with secrets. Who tampered with the brakes? What old enemies lurked in the fog of Ethan's past? For the first time in years, Ethan felt the pull of family. Not blood, but chosen, forged in the fire of a promise kept. The coastal wind whipped through his hair as he accelerated, the ocean's roar a symphony of second chances. Redemption wasn't a destination. It was this ride, this stand against the fall. And as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows over the highway, Ethan knew the oath would answer, 70 strong, maybe more, because one boy's sharp notice had reignited a brotherhood's silent vow. The disaster prevented was just the beginning. The real storm brewed in the hearts of men who chose loyalty over letting go. The highway blurred into a ribbon of asphalt under Ethan's tires. The Pacific's endless churn to his left, a constant companion, whispering secrets of storms yet to break. His Harley growled low, vibrating through his gloves like an old friend's urgent plea. The morning mist clung to the cliffs, turning the world into a watercolor of grays and blues. But Ethan's mind raced ahead, replaying the boy's sharp warning, the drip of brake fluid like blood from a hidden wound. Caleb's voice, small but steady, had cut through the chaos. "Mister, the fluid, it's leaking bad." That innocence, paired with his own instincts, had pulled Marcus and his son back from the edge. But as Ethan crested a rise, the salty tang of sea air mixing with the faint exhaust from his bike, doubt crept in like fog rolling off the waves. He'd promised Jake, under that star-pricked desert sky, to watch for the overlooked, the mechanics grinding through long days, the kids caught in the crossfire of hard luck. Jake's eyes, fading in the sand, had locked on his. "Ride for them, brother. Not for us, but for the ones who can't." Ethan had kept that vow in fragments, solo runs that patched his soul but never mended it whole. Now, with the truck's sabotage echoing in his thoughts, he wondered if this was the pull he'd evaded for years. His phone, tucked in his jacket pocket, buzzed again, another message from the oath's encrypted chain. "Heard about the cliff, riders inbound. You calling the play?" It was from Lucas, A grizzled vet from Ethan's unit, now holed up in a rainy Oregon mill town, his own scars hidden under ink and leather. Ethan pulled into a weathered overlook, the kind where tourists snapped selfies oblivious to the drop below. He killed the engine, the sudden quiet amplifying the crash of waves far beneath. Leaning against his bike, he scrolled through the replies. 70 confirmations and climbing. Brothers from dusty Nevada trails to fog-shrouded Seattle docks. They weren't outlaws. They were guardians, bound by the Iron Oath, a creed etched in blood and bike grease, promising aid without strings, justice without fanfare. But this felt different. Marcus's garage, perched on the edge of a booming coastal strip, had drawn eyes from developers hungry for waterfront gold. Whispers in the diner last night spoke of cut lines, not accidents, rival shops or worse, crooked officials turning a blind eye for kickbacks. As the sun pierced the mist, casting golden shafts across the road, a familiar rumble approached from the south. Ethan looked up to see a lone figure on a chopped Indian, pulling up with a nod that spoke volumes. It was Samuel, broad-shouldered and quiet, a former firefighter who'd traded hoses for handlebars after a warehouse blaze claimed his crew. They'd ridden together post-Jake, sharing silences heavier than words. Samuel dismounted, his boots crunching gravel, and extended a calloused hand. Heard the call. Kid's got eyes like a hawk, saved more than breaks yesterday. Ethan clasped it, feeling the unspoken weight. Yeah, but someone's playing dirty. Marcus thinks it's that suit from the city planning office, pushing him out for condos. Samuel's jaw tightened, his eyes scanning the horizon as if threats hid in the haze. They walked to the overlook's edge, the wind tugging at their jackets, carrying the faint scent of pine from inland hills. "Oath says we stand," Samuel said, voice low like distant thunder. "But we do it clean. No guns, no glory. Just truth." Ethan nodded, the moral compass Jake had implanted spinning true. Corruption here wasn't abstract. It was a father's hand shaking on a wheel, a boy's life dangling over rocks. They'd start at the garage, piece together the sabotage, maybe trace the fluid to tampered parts from a shady supplier. But as they talked, a patrol car crested the road below, its lights flashing briefly before slowing near the spot of yesterday's near miss. The officer stepped out, notepad in hand, but his gaze lingered too long on Ethan's bike, suspicion etched in his stance. Back on the road, engines in tandem, they rolled toward town. The coastal strip unfolded, bait shops with weathered signs, families strolling boardwalks, the illusion of small-town peace masking undercurrents of greed. Marcus's garage squatted at the end of a side street, bays open to the sun, tools gleaming like promises of repair. Caleb was there, wiping down a workbench, his freckled face lighting up as the bikes pulled in. "You came back!" he called, dropping a rag that smelled of oil and effort. Marcus emerged from the office, wiping his hands, gratitude softening his tired eyes. "Didn't expect the cavalry so soon." Ethan dismounted, scanning the lot, the truck up on blocks, its undercarriage exposed like a confession. "We ride for fixes that last," he said, clapping Caleb's shoulder. The boy beamed, but his eyes darted to the patrol car now idling across the street. Inside the bay, under the hum of fluorescent lights and the clink of wrenches, they dug in. Samuel traced the brake line, finding the slice, clean, deliberate, not wear from miles. "This was no accident," he murmured, the air thick with the sharp bite of metal shavings. Marcus's face paled. "Been fighting off buyouts? That developer, Harlan, wait, no relation, sent goons last week, said the land's progress." Ethan's fist clenched, the old war rage simmering, but he reined it in. Justice here meant evidence, witnesses, exposing the rot without becoming it. Caleb hovered nearby, handing tools with quiet efficiency, his warning from the cliff yesterday forging a bond unspoken. As afternoon shadows lengthened, pulling the garage into twilight hues, another rider arrived, Natalie, a nurse with a no-nonsense braid and a soft ale that purred like a secret. She'd patched up oath brothers from bar fights to breakdowns, her hands steady as oaths. "Brought meds for the road," she said, but her eyes held the fire of shared purpose. They gathered around a scarred table, maps of the coast spread out, plotting the next move. Tail the developers' crew, document the threats, rally locals who'd felt the squeeze. Ethan's voice steadied them. "We don't break. We build. For the kid. For the promise." Caleb listened, wide-eyed, the weight of chosen family settling like dust after a ride. But as dusk painted the sky in bruised purples, the patrol car returned, this time with backup. The officer approached, badge glinting under the bay lights. "Heard about your little club gathering. Stay out of official business." Tension crackled, engines idling like held breaths. Ethan stepped forward, calm as the sea at rest. "Just helping a neighbor, that's all." The standoff hung, moral lines drawn in the sand, the oath's silent strength, a shield against the encroaching dark. Redemption rode on the edge of this choice: uncover the truth, or let corruption claim another soul. The night deepened, promising trials that would test every vow. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The patrol car's headlights sliced through the gathering dusk like accusatory fingers, pinning the garage in a harsh glow. Ethan stood his ground, arms loose at his sides, the leather of his jacket creaking faintly with each measured breath. The officer, a stocky man named Harlan with a mustache that hid his sneer, stepped closer, his boots scuffing the oil-stained concrete. Behind him, another cruiser idled, its engine a low growl that matched the tension coiling in the air. Caleb edged back toward the workbench, his small fingers gripping a wrench like a talisman, eyes flicking between the bikers and the badges. Marcus hovered protectively, his mechanic's hands balled into fists, the scent of brake fluid still clinging to his skin like a bad omen. "We're not here for trouble," Ethan said, his voice steady as the horizon, carrying the weight of roads traveled and battles unspoken. Samuel flanked him, silent sentinel, while Natalie crossed her arms, her nurse's gaze assessing the scene like a wound in need of stitching. The officer's eyes narrowed, sweeping over the Harleys lined up like iron sentinels. "This town's got rules. Bikers stirring up locals. Looks like interference to me. That truck incident. Official report says mechanical failure. You folks poking around could complicate things." His tone dripped with implication, the kind that suggested alliances deeper than duty, whispers of payoffs from developers who'd oiled the wheels of progress with dirty money. Ethan met the man's stare, the salt-laced wind off the coast tugging at the edges of their standoff. He could smell the faint ozone from the cruiser's exhaust, taste the bitterness of restraint on his tongue. Jake's promise echoed in his mind, not to fight shadows with shadows, but to illuminate them, to stand for the Marcuses of the world, the fathers whose only crime was holding on too tight. No interference, just neighbors fixing what's broken. You got a problem with that? The officer hesitated, radio crackling on his shoulder like static doubt, then spat on the ground. "Keep it clean, Harlan, or we'll make it official." He turned back to his car, the backup peeling away with a screech that lingered like a threat. The garage exhaled as one, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead in the sudden quiet. Marcus locked the bay doors with a metallic clang, his face etched with lines deeper than the canyon roads. That was close. They've been circling since the buyout offers started, subtle at first, then not. Last month, tools went missing, invoices lost. Now this. He led them inside to a cramped office, walls papered with faded calendars and yellowed photos of better days. Caleb as a toddler, grinning beside a half-built engine. Natalie poured coffee from a dented pot, the rich aroma cutting through the lingering tension, while Samuel sketched a rough map on a napkin, routes to the developer's office, shadowed alleys where deals might slink. Caleb perched on a stool, listening with the gravity of someone who'd stared down a cliff and lived. As the group huddled, Ethan's phone vibrated again, Lucas this time, voice gravelly over the line from his Oregon outpost. "More riders en route. 80 now, brother. But word's out. The developers got ties to the force. We play smart, eyes open, no charges." Ethan pocketed the device, the weight of the oath settling like a well-worn vest. He'd left the full brotherhood after Jake's fall, the desert ambush that stole his closest ally in a blur of sand and gunfire. "Watch the flanks, Ethan. Promise me you'll keep riding for the little guys." Those words had chained him to solitude, but Caleb's warning yesterday, sharp as a spark plug, had cracked the isolation. This wasn't just a fix, it was redemption's throttle, twisting open. They pored over the truck's undercarriage photos Marcus had snapped, the sliced line glaring like a signature. "Supplier in the next town over," Marcus said, tracing a finger along the map. "Shady outfit. Parts that failed just right. I pushed back on their contract last week." Samuel nodded, his firefighter's instincts flaring. "We ride there at first light, document everything. No confrontation, just truth." Natalie added her piece, her voice soft but edged with steel from years mending the broken. "And the locals. I've got contacts at the clinic, folks squeezed out by those condos. Stories add up to evidence." Caleb piped up, his voice cutting the adult's murmur like a clear bell. "I saw a van near the garage 2 nights ago. Black, no plates, parked funny, like they were watching." The boy's eyes held no fear now, only the quiet resolve of one who'd chosen to notice. Night deepened outside, the coastal fog rolling in like a shroud, muffling the distant crash of waves. Ethan stepped out for air, leaning against his Harley as stars pricked the velvet sky. The chrome cooled under his palm, a reminder of miles that had carried him from war's echoes to this precipice. Jake would approve, this stand, this gathering of chosen kin. But doubt gnawed. What if the corruption ran deeper, ensnaring not just developers, but the very oaths meant to protect? A low rumble approached from the highway, headlights piercing the mist. More oath riders, silhouettes materializing like ghosts summoned by loyalty. First came Andrew, a wiry vet with a custom chopper, then a cluster from the inland runs, engines harmonizing in a chorus of commitment. They dismounted in the lot, nods exchanged in the half-light, no words needed for the bond. 80 strong now and growing, a family forged not in blood, but in the fire of promises kept. Ethan addressed them briefly, his voice carrying over the idling bikes. "We ride for the boy who saw the leak, for the father who builds with honest hands. No vengeance, just justice, the kind that endures." Murmurs of agreement rippled, leather and metal shifting like a living armor. Caleb watched from the doorway, Marcus's arm around his shoulders, the scene etching into his young mind. Men and women who chose the road less taken, turning back the tide of indifference. But as the group dispersed to makeshift camps in the lot, sleeping bags unrolled under starry vigil, a shadow detached from the fog. A figure on foot, hesitant, approached Ethan by his bike. It was an older woman, lines of worry creasing her face, clutching a crumpled flyer for the developer's project. "I heard about the truck. My husband's shop went under last year. Same tricks, sabotage, threats. Please, help us stand." Her words hung heavy, the moral weight pulling more threads into the web. Ethan nodded, the oath's creed igniting fully now. Dawn would bring the ride to the supplier, the unraveling of lies. Yet in the quiet hours before, as the ocean sighed against the cliffs, Ethan felt the stir of true purpose. A redemption not solitary, but shared, echoing Jake's dying light. The fog lifted slowly, revealing the first blush of sunrise over the water, gilding the waves in liquid gold. Engines stirred to life, a symphony building as the convoy formed. Caleb waved from the garage steps, his warning from the day before now, the spark of a larger fire. The road ahead wound with peril and promise, the oath's justice a quiet thunder against corruption's storm. Ethan throttled forward, the wind cleansing, carrying him toward the heart of the fray. The convoy snaked along the coastal highway, like a living vein of steel and resolve, engines thrumming in unison against the morning's crisp bite. Ethan led the pack, his Harley cutting through the mist-shrouded air, the scent of salt and pine sharpening with each mile. Behind him, 80 riders strong, oath brothers and sisters from forgotten corners of the map, formed a rolling testament to loyalty's quiet power. Samuel rode flank, his Indian's growl a steady counterpoint, while Natalie weaved through the line on her Softail, her braid whipping like a flag of defiance. The sun climbed higher, burning off the fog to reveal the rugged cliffs dropping away to the sea, waves crashing below in foamy whitecaps that mirrored the turmoil churning in Ethan's gut. They'd left Marcus's garage at first light, Caleb's small figure a silhouette in the doorway, his wave carrying the innocence that had reignited this fire. The boy's sharp eyes on that brake fluid drip, dark rivulets betraying betrayal, had pulled them all into motion. Now, the target was the supplier's warehouse, a squat concrete bunker on the outskirts of the next town, where parts flowed like tainted blood into honest shops. Whispers from the night before painted it clear. Cut lines, faulty fittings, all funneled by hands greased for profit. Ethan's mind replayed Jake's desert plea, the sand still warm under their boots as his brother-in-arms faded. Keep the road pure, Ethan, for the ones who trust it. This ride wasn't vengeance. It was purification, a moral scalpel to excise the rot without spilling into chaos. The highway widened into industrial sprawl, the ocean's roar fading to the metallic clang of loading docks and the acrid tang of welding torches. Ethan signaled a pull-off near the warehouse perimeter, tires crunching over gravel as the convoy halted in a disciplined arc. No revving displays, no leather-clad bravado, just purposeful dismounts, eyes scanning chain-link fences topped with barbed wire that glinted like false teeth. Samuel approached first, toolkit in hand, his firefighters poised, turning scrutiny into strategy. We document, we observe, in and out like smoke. Natalie nodded, slipping a small camera from her saddlebag, her nurse's hands steady for capturing truths that healed communities, not just bodies. Inside the fence, shadows played across stacks of crates stamped with generic labels, brake kits, hoses, the vanes of vehicles. Ethan moved with the grace of a man who'd navigated minefields, his boots silent on the cracked pavement. A side door hung ajar, spilling the hum of fluorescent lights and the sharp scent of hydraulic fluid. They slipped in, hearts pounding in rhythm with the distant whir of forklifts. In a dimly lit bay, shelves groaned under inventory, but one section drew them, rows of brake lines, identical to the sabotaged one on Marcus's truck, their packaging pristine yet ominous. Samuel knelt, gloved fingers tracing a seam, too clean, too uniform. These aren't factory flaws, modified here, deliberate. A rustle from the shadows snapped their heads up. A worker, mid-30s with grease-streaked overalls and wary eyes, froze behind a pallet. Ethan raised a hand, palm out, voice low and even. Not here to cause waves, just looking for answers. You seen anything off with these parts? The man, call him Ryan from the faded name tag, glanced at the door, sweat beading despite the cool air. His gaze darted to the camera in Natalie's grip, then back. You oath? Heard your kind's rolling in. Boss man. He don't like questions. But yeah, I've boxed 'em. Orders from up top, special cuts for certain clients. Coastal garages, the ones holding out. Ryan's voice cracked like brittle asphalt, the weight of complicity etching his face. He wasn't corrupt at heart, just a cog in the machine, trading silence for a paycheck in a town where jobs were scarcer than honest deals. Ethan felt the moral tether pull taut. Jake's oath demanded mercy for the small fish, but exposure for the sharks. "Who's up top?" "The developer, Harlan Developments." Ryan nodded, swallowing hard, the air thick with the oily residue of fear. "And badges on the take. They swing by nights, cash in envelopes. Said it's progress, condos for the rich, push out the little guys." Natalie's lens captured it all. The time-stamped shelves, Ryan's hesitant testimony, the faint scuff marks suggesting hurried alterations. No confrontation, just evidence stacking like bricks in a wall of truth. As they backed out, Ethan pressed a burner phone into Ryan's hand. "If it gets hot, call. We're not the enemy." The worker pocketed it, a flicker of relief breaking through, the first crack in the facade of indifference. Back in the daylight, the convoy reformed, but the air hummed with urgency. Ethan's radio crackled, Lucas from the rear guard. "Eyes on a tail, black van, same as the kid described, circling 2 miles back." The words landed like gravel in the tank, stirring the Brotherhood's vigilance. They accelerated, engines roaring in controlled fury, weaving through traffic toward a neutral meet point. An abandoned pier jutting into the bay, where salt-crusted pilings offered cover. The van pursued, aggressive but sloppy, its tinted windows hiding intent. Samuel gunned ahead, blocking an intersection with precise throttle, forcing the pursuer to brake hard amid honking horns. Natalie flanked, camera rolling as the van veered onto a side road, tires squealing in retreat. At the pier, waves lapped against weathered wood, carrying the briny whisper of secrets unearthed. The group dismounted, forming a loose circle under the creaking beams, the sun now high and unforgiving. Ethan addressed them, voice carrying over the gulls' cries. "We've got proof, lines cut on purpose, ties to the developer and badges. But this van, it's the storm breaking early." Murmurs rippled, faces set in determination. Andrew sharpening a mental map, others checking phones for local allies. Caleb's warning echoed in Ethan's mind, that boy's intuition, the compass guiding them. Corruption thrived in silence. The oath shattered it with chosen bonds, turning solo rides into a symphony of justice. Yet doubt flickered as a patrol boat sliced the water nearby, its wake rocking the pier. Were the waters already poisoned? The law's long arm reaching even here? Ethan gripped his handlebars, the chrome warm under his palms, Jake's promise a steady flame. They'd deliver the evidence to a trusted contact, a retired judge in the next county, far from coastal strings. No raids, no reckonings in the dark, just daylight truth, the kind that redeemed not with fists, but with integrity. As the convoy prepared to roll again, the horizon stretched endless, peril and purpose intertwined. The boys' notice had prevented one fall. Now it propelled them toward preventing a town's unraveling, Honor's engine driving them forward into the gathering gale. If this tale of quiet courage stirs your heart, hit that like button below. It helps spread these stories of redemption and unbreakable bonds to riders everywhere. The pier's weathered planks groaned under the weight of boots and resolve, the midday sun beating down like an unyielding interrogator. Ethan paced the edge, the salty spray from the bay misting his face, carrying the faint rot of barnacles and forgotten cargo. The convoy's engines ticked cool in the background, a chorus of patient guardians, while the 80 riders formed a ragged semicircle, their leather vests etched with the Iron Oath's subtle emblem, a coiled rope against a rising sun, symbol of bonds that held against the fall. Samuel leaned against a piling, arms crossed, his eyes scanning the horizon where the patrol boat had vanished into the haze. Natalie reviewed footage on her camera, the screen's glow reflecting the quiet fire in her gaze. While Andrew and the others murmured strategies, the air thick with the creak of wood and the distant horn of a freighter. Ethan stopped, facing the group, his voice rising clear over the lap of waves. "That van's no ghost. It's the developer's muscle, testing our flanks. We've got the photos, Ryan's words on tape. Next move, straight to Judge Ellis in Willow Creek. He's clean, off the grid since retirement. Delivers this to the right ears, and the Badger's house of cards topples. Nods rippled through the ranks, faces weathered by their own roads of loss. Vets like Lucas, who'd lost a leg in the same desert that claimed Jake. Nurses and mechanics who'd traded badges for handlebars after seeing too much institutional rot. This wasn't a raid. It was a relay of truth, passing the torch of Jake's promise from one set of hands to the next. Caleb's warning, that innocent spot of danger under the truck, had started it all, a boy's intuition weaving them into this unbreakable chain. But as they mounted up, the radio crackled again, Lucas's voice edged with gravel. Hostiles inbound, 2 vans plus a unmarked SUV, closing from the East Road. The pier tensed, engines firing in a low rumble that vibrated through the planks like a heartbeat quickening. Ethan throttled his Harley, the chrome flashing under the sun as the convoy surged forward, tires biting asphalt in a disciplined exodus. The bay blurred to their right, a churning blue mirror of the chaos nipping at their heels. Samuel pulled alongside, shouting over the wind. Split the pack, half to the judge, half draw the tail. We don't engage, we evade. Ethan nodded, the moral line sharp in his mind. Jake's oath forbade the slide into shadows, even as corruption chased them like hounds on a scent. The highway twisted inland, leaving the coast's embrace for rolling hills dotted with eucalyptus, their leaves whispering secrets in the breeze. Ethan led the lead group, 20 strong, including Natalie and a few scouts, pushing the speed just enough to widen the gap without inviting sirens. The air cooled, carrying the earthy tang of sagebrush, a stark contrast to the brine of peril behind. In his mirrors, he glimpsed the decoy riders peeling off toward a side canyon, engines roaring defiance as dust clouds billowed like smoke signals. Samuel's voice cut through the headset. "They're biting. We've got 'em looped for now." Relief flickered, but Ethan's grip tightened on the bars, the vibration humming up his arms like unresolved echoes from the war. This pursuit wasn't random. It was the developer's desperation. Harlan's empire of condos built on sabotaged dreams, now threatened by a mechanic's garage and a boy's keen eyes. Miles blurred into a tense rhythm, the sun dipping toward afternoon gold, casting long shadows that danced like doubts across the road. Willow Creek emerged, a sleepy cluster of clapboard shops and a white-steepled courthouse, the kind of place where justice still whispered of integrity. Judge Ellis waited at a nondescript diner on the outskirts, his silver hair catching the light through the window as Ethan pulled in. The old man rose from a booth, face lined like an old road map, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd heard the oath's call years back, after a courtroom scandal soured his faith in the system, and now lent his weight to causes that mattered. Harlan, he said with a wry smile, shaking Ethan's hand. "No relation, I hope?" The group crowded the table, Natalie's camera passing under the laminate like contraband wisdom. Ellis scanned the footage, his brow furrowing deeper with each frame, the sliced brake lines, Ryan's halting confession, timestamps aligning with threats at Marcus's shop. The diner's air hummed with the sizzle of burgers and the murmur of locals oblivious to the storm brewing. "This ties to bigger fish," Ellis murmured, voice low as the clink of coffee cups. "Harlan's got council pockets lined, pushing eminent domain under false pretenses. Your evidence? It could freeze the projects, expose the badges on payroll, but it'll stir the hive. Expect pushback." Ethan's jaw set, the weight of the oath settling heavier. Jake's dying words resurfaced, sand in his throat. "Don't let the system bury the good ones, brother. Ride through it." This delivery was a step toward that, handing the reins to a man who'd once wielded them with honor, now passing judgment from the shadows. As they stepped out, the diner's neon sign flickering to life in the waning light, a low rumble approached from the tree line, not the vans, but reinforcements. Oath riders looping back, faces smeared with canyon dust, reporting the tail shaken, but not scattered. Samuel dismounted, clapping Ethan on the back. They scattered like roaches, but one's got plates we can trace. The group reformed, a circle of chosen kin under the emerging stars, the scent of cooling engines mingling with the pine-scented dusk. Natalie pocketed the camera's drive, now in Ellis's safekeeping, her voice steady. Truths planted, now we water it, with witnesses, more stories from the squeezed-out shops. Caleb's face flashed in Ethan's mind, that freckled determination, the boy who'd noticed what others missed. This ride honored him, turning a near disaster into a beacon against the greed that clipped wings before they flew. Yet, as night cloaked the hills, a call came through, Marcus's voice tight with urgency. They're at the garage, badges and suits tearing through records. Caleb scared, but holding. The words landed like a punch, igniting the fire in Ethan's chest. The convoy ignited engines once more, headlights piercing the dark like vows renewed. Willow Creek faded in the mirrors, the road ahead, a vein of asphalt pulsing with purpose. Corruption's hand had reached for the heart of it all, the father and son who'd sparked this stand. Ethan accelerated, wind whipping his jacket, the iron oath's silent thunder building. Redemption demanded confrontation now, not with fury, but with the unyielding light of loyalty. The boy's warning had prevented one cliff's call. This night, it would prevent the fall of everything built on honest sweat. The miles stretched, tension coiling like a spring, toward the garage where family waited, and justice hung in the balance. The night air sliced through the convoy like a cold blade, carrying the sharp tang of eucalyptus and exhaust as Ethan's Harley led the charge back toward the coast. The hills gave way to the familiar twist of the highway, cliffs looming dark on one side, the ocean's restless murmur on the other, its waves a distant percussion urging them onward. 80 engines throbbed in harmony, headlights carving tunnels through the blackness, illuminating fleeting glimpses of roadside scrub and the occasional glint of reflectors like wary eyes. Ethan's mind raced ahead to Marcus's garage, the call's urgency echoing in his ears, badges rifling drawers, suits barking orders, Caleb's voice a faint tremor in the background. The boy's warning, that simple spot of brake fluid, had set this all in motion, pulling the oath from dormancy into the fray. Now it threatened to drag the innocent back into the shadows of greed. Samuel rode tight on his flank, the Indian's deeper rumble a steady anchor, while Natalie kept pace in the core, her soft ale weaving with the precision of someone who'd mended lives under pressure. The wind tugged at Ethan's jacket, the leather's familiar creak grounding him against the rising storm in his chest. Jake's promise burned brighter than ever, a desert oath forged in loss. Protect the overlooked, stand against the tide that drowned the honest. This wasn't about glory or payback, it was the quiet honor of chosen family circling wagons around a father and son who'd trusted a stranger's hand. But as the miles peeled away, doubt whispered, had the evidence to Judge Ellis bought them time, or just painted a bigger target on the garage's weathered door? The coastal strip emerged from the gloom, bait shops shuttered and boardwalks empty under sodium lamps that buzzed like uneasy sentinels. Ethan signaled a slowdown, the convoy throttling back to a low growl as they crested the final rise. Marcus's place glowed ahead, floodlights harsh against the night, casting long shadows across the lot, where 2 cruisers and a sleek black SUV squatted like predators. Figures moved inside the open bays, uniforms flipping through ledgers, a sharp-suited man in a trench coat gesturing sharply, his face a mask of calculated impatience. Through the office window, Ethan spotted Caleb pressed against the wall, Marcus's arm a protective barrier. The boy's freckled face, pale but defiant, clutching that same wrench like a shield. Ethan killed his engine first, the sudden silence amplifying the crunch of boots on gravel as the riders dismounted in a fluid wave. No dramatic entrances, just a purposeful advance, leather and denim blending into the night like ghosts reclaiming their ground. Samuel fell in step beside him, voice a low murmur. We document, we witness. Let the truth do the talking. Natalie slipped forward with her camera already rolling, the soft whir lost in the coastal breeze. The air hung heavy with the scent of spilled coffee and ink from disturbed files, mingled with the faint ozone of authorities' overreach. As they approached the bay doors, the suited man, Harlan himself, broad and polished like a shark in silk, turned, his eyes narrowing at the influx of silhouettes. "This is private property," Harlan snapped, stepping into the light, his voice oiled with false calm. Two officers flanked him, hands hovering near belts, the metallic jingle of gear, a subtle threat. Marcus straightened from the office doorway, his mechanic's frame taut, eyes locking on Ethan's with a mix of relief and resolve. "They're with me, friends, helping sort this mess." Caleb peeked out, his gaze finding Ethan's, a silent nod passing between them, the boy who'd noticed the leak now seeing the bigger sabotage unfold. The air thickened, tension coiling like a spring under the fluorescent hum, the distant crash of waves underscoring the standoff's fragility. Ethan halted a respectful distance, hands visible and open, the oath's creed guiding every word. "No trouble here, just concerned citizens checking on a neighbor. Heard there might be some questions about that truck." Harlan's lip curled, but his eyes flicked to the riders fanning out, not aggressively but observantly, phones subtly capturing the scene. "Official investigation. Sabotage claims are wild. Could be insurance fraud. Best you all clear out before it gets complicated." The lie hung blatant, the sliced brake lines evidence now en route to Ellis, but here it was the raw exercise of power. Badges bending to protect the hand that fed them. Samuel shifted, his firefighter's bulk a quiet wall, while Natalie zoomed in on the scattered records, dates aligning with the supplier's special cuts, invoices marked for Harlan's projects. One officer stepped forward, radio crackling with dispatch chatter, but Ethan caught the hesitation, the moral flicker in the man's eyes. Not all were rotten, some just followed orders until the light broke through. "We've got rights too," Ethan said evenly, voice carrying the road's unyielding timbre. "To stand with honest folk. That boy saved lives spotting trouble, now someone's trying to bury it." Caleb edged closer to Marcus, his small voice cutting the hush. "They took my dad's tools, said it's evidence, but I saw them pocket stuff." The words landed like pebbles in still water, rippling doubt across the officers' faces. Harlan's composure cracked, a vein pulsing at his temple, the scent of his cologne clashing with the garage's honest grit. The standoff stretched, seconds ticking like a cooling engine, the night air cooling further as fog tendrils crept from the sea. Riders murmured support to Marcus, offers to secure the bays, eyes on the perimeter, turning the garage into a fortress of loyalty without a single raised voice. Natalie captured Harlan's flustered retreat to the SUV, barking into his phone as the officers gathered files with less zeal. "This isn't over," he hissed, slamming the door, the vehicle peeling out with a spray of gravel that stung like parting shots. The cruisers lingered a beat longer, then followed, taillights fading into the mist, leaving the lot in heavy quiet broken only by the waves' sigh. Marcus exhaled, slumping against the doorframe, pulling Caleb into a rough embrace. "You all. You turned the tide." The group gathered, the fluorescent lights softening their edges, the aroma of fresh coffee Natalie brewed, cutting the tension like a balm. Ethan knelt to Caleb's level, the boy's eyes bright with the night's weight. "You noticed again, kid. That's the real power, seeing what's hidden." Samuel clapped Marcus on the back while others set to rights the rifled office, a chosen family mending what greed had torn. But as the adrenaline ebbed, Ethan's phone buzzed. Ellis's contact, evidence filed, warrants brewing. But Harlan's web ran deeper, threads to City Hall that could snag them all. Dawn hovered on the horizon, painting the cliffs in pale promise, but the road ahead twisted with unfinished reckonings. The oath had held the line, their silent stand a testament to Jake's vow, redemption woven into every shared glance. Yet whispers of retaliation lingered in the fog, the developer's desperation a shadow that could strike anywhere. Ethan fired his Harley, the engine's rumble a vow renewed, as the convoy prepared to escort Marcus and Caleb through the morning light. The boy's warning had sparked it. Now, loyalty would see it through to justice's dawn, or the cost of honor's price. The first rays of dawn pierced the coastal fog like hesitant fingers, gilding the garage's oil-slicked lot in soft amber. Ethan's Harley idled low, its exhaust a gentle puff against the chill morning air, mingling with the briny whisper of the sea and the faint, acrid residue of last night's tension. The convoy encircled the property in a protective crescent, engines murmuring like a collective heartbeat, headlights dimmed to avoid drawing eyes too soon. Marcus stood in the open bay, tools already in hand, methodically restoring order to the rifled shelves, wrenches slotted back into foam cutouts, invoices stacked with deliberate care. Caleb hovered nearby, his freckled cheeks flushed from the night's vigil, but his eyes held a newfound steadiness, the wrench now tucked away like a badge of quiet victory. Ethan dismounted, boots crunching gravel that still bore the skid marks from Harlan's hasty retreat. The air hummed with the subtle shift of leather and denim as riders stirred, sharing thermoses of steaming coffee that carried the rich, grounding scent of roasted beans. Samuel approached, his broad frame casting a long shadow, nodding toward the highway where the last wisps of fog clung to the cliffs. Ellis texted, "Warrants are moving. Harlan's office gets hit today, but expect ripples." Natalie joined them, her camera safed in a saddlebag, the weight of captured truths lightening her step. "Locals are talking. That worker, Ryan? He called in anonymous tips matching ours. The web's fraying." Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, the fabric dark with grease that spoke of honest labor reclaimed. "Can't thank you enough. Thought we'd lose everything, the shop, the life we've scraped together." He ruffled Caleb's hair, the boy leaning into the touch with a shy grin. Ethan's chest tightened, Jake's desert vow resurfacing in the morning light. Ride for the overlooked, bind the broken with loyalty's rope. This garage, this father and son, embodied it, the overlooked fighting against a tide of condos and corruption that valued profit over people. "No thanks needed," Ethan replied, voice rough from the road's endless song. "The oath rides for this. Promises kept, that's all." As the sun crested fully, bathing the coast in warm gold, a distant wail pierced the calm, sirens not aggressive but purposeful, echoing off the waves like justice's clarion. The convoy tensed, hands drifting to pockets where phones recorded silently, but Ethan raised a palm, steadying them. From the direction of town rolled a procession, 3 official sedans, lights flashing in measured pulses, followed by a news van with antennae twitching like curious antennae. No raid, no confrontation, just the unraveling. Threads pulled by Ellis's filings and the mounting chorus of witnesses. The lead car halted at the lot's edge, a stern-faced investigator stepping out, badge catching the light. "Mr. Harlan, Ethan, we're here on the developer's matter. Evidence points to tampering at multiple sites. Your statements corroborated it." Harlan himself arrived minutes later, cuffed and flanked by uniforms whose postures spoke of reluctant duty, the once polished suit rumpled like his facade. His eyes, darting from the bikers to Marcus, held no sneer now, only the hollow defeat of a man whose greed had outrun his grasp. "This is a mistake," he muttered, as they led him to a cruiser, but the words fell flat against the morning's clarity, the ocean's steady rhythm mocking his bluster. Caleb watched from the bay, Marcus's hand on his shoulder, the boy's sharp intuition. the very notice of that brake fluid drip, now the linchpin that had toppled the scheme. Developers' bribes, badges, envelopes, sabotaged parts, all exposed in daylight. The Iron Oath's quiet documentation, the hammer that struck true. The investigator turned to Ethan, notebook in hand, the air alive with the snap of seagulls wheeling overhead. Your group's involvement, unorthodox but clean. No priors, just aid. We'll need formal depositions, but this town's grateful. Nods rippled through the riders, faces etched with the satisfaction of vows fulfilled. Samuel's firefighter resolve, Natalie's healing touch extended to a community's wounds, Lucas and Andrew exchanging glances that bridged miles of shared scars. Ethan clasped the man's hand, the grip firm as forged steel. We ride for the promise, nothing more. As the officials departed, towing Harlan's empire in their wake, the garage exhaled, tools clinking in resumption of normalcy, the scent of fresh welds promising repairs that would endure. By midday, the convoy gathered one last time, engines firing in a farewell symphony that vibrated through the lot like a benediction. Marcus and Caleb stood at the forefront, the boy clutching a small oath patch Ethan had pressed into his palm. A coiled rope, symbol of bonds that held. "Come back any time," Marcus said, voice thick, pulling Ethan into a brief, brotherly hug. Caleb beamed up at him. "You taught me to look closer, mister. Won't forget." The words landed soft, a balm on Ethan's road-worn soul, Jake's echo fading into peace. Redemption wasn't a single ride. It was this, the chosen family dispersing yet unbreakable, scattering to horizons, but called by the same creed. Ethan throttled his Harley last, the throaty rumble blending with the waves as he led the exodus onto the highway. The cliffs rose majestic, the Pacific stretching endless, sunlight dancing on crests like scattered diamonds. Behind, the garage shrank in his mirrors, a beacon of justice won through moral steel, not might. Samuel peeled off north, Natalie south, the 80-strong fanning like roots reclaiming ground. Ethan accelerated, wind cleansing the last shadows of doubt. Jake's promise not a chain, but a compass, guiding him toward whatever call came next. The boy's warning had prevented disaster. The oath had ensured it echoed into legacy, honor as the true open road, family chosen in the dust and dawn. In the quiet miles ahead, Ethan felt the weight lift, the desert stars aligning with coastal light. Some debts were paid not in blood, but in the simple act of noticing, standing, riding on. Thank you for joining this journey of quiet courage and unbreakable promises. If these tales of redemption touch your soul, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. We ride together for more stories that honor the heart of the road.